All right, we are live and direct here in beautiful but infected Winnipeg, Manitoba. My name is Jonathan Lay. I'm so happy to be here tonight. It feels like forever since we did an event that was really kind of game centric, specifically indie game centric, which I think everyone knows where our heart is. So yeah, we're really excited to have a great guest and a great moderator here. But before we do that, I'll just do the mandatory spiel about New Media Manitoba. Most of you probably know what we do. We're the Industry Association for Interactive Digital Media here in the province, and our mandate is to kind of make great things happen for the industry, including video games, which is kind of one of our primary focuses. So from AAA to just tiny one-person shops, we want to work with everyone and we want to help everyone. So we have all sorts of program supports, business development supports, training supports, you name it, we do it. We're very open to dialogue, so always feel free to drop us a line about suggestions for programming or ideas, or maybe some training that you'd like to see. Maybe Unreal 5 stuff is on your minds right now. Who knows? Anyway, we're really excited to have Joe Russ here of Mografi or Mogafi Studio. I'm sorry, I
Mografi, yeah.
Mografi, yeah, Joe's created a really wonderful game that I can honestly personally endorse because I had a wonderful time playing it with my daughter. And as any middle-aged man will tell you, finding time to play games is really difficult when you're my age. And it was just a really pleasant and charming and wonderful experience. So the game's got such really good mechanics and a great look to it, and I'm really excited to kind of hear the whole story. But I'm going to get off stage and stop blabbing and pass it over to Albertine to do the intro. So have a great session, Joe.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for that, John and New Media Manitoba, and thanks again, Joe. You heard John's spiel, so now you're going to hear my spiel. Get ready for one more.
Okay.
So as I was mentioning to Joe just before we came on here, I personally have been following Jenny LeClue Detective since I was working at my very first game industry job. I'm a game developer as well, and I've been following the project for 7+ years now. So I'm a huge fan. So this is really exciting for me. Genuinely is a dream come true. So thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us today, Joe. We appreciate it. We know your time is limited and it means a lot to us. So now I'm just going to sing your praises for a few seconds here.
Oh gosh. Okay.
So for those who may not be familiar, get familiarized because Jenny LeClue is really great. But Jenny LeClue Detective is Joe's game. It has been recognized by a veritable who's who of game dev festivals and publications since 2014, earning selections and praise from everyone from PAX East, Indie Mega Booth, the Sony PlayStation Experience, Unite Europe, the Indie Media Exchange at GDC and E3, and then publications like Rock Paper Shotgun, Kotaku, Killscreen, and lots more, all the greats. So it's suffice to say we are incredibly lucky to have you here today and to learn more about the game. So whenever you're ready, please do begin. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for all those kind words. I'm sure I'm going to repeat some of that in my little presentation here. Thank you for having me. Let me figure out how to share my screen. Hold on a second. And I will tell you all a little bit about Jenny LeClue. Can everyone see that? I don't know if I can hear anyone else. Can you all see my screen? Okay, cool. All right. So I will start. Obviously, they gave a little bit of a intro for me, but yeah, I wanted to talk to you all today, give you an overview of kind of the story of Jenny LeClue. It's kind of a high-level overview. So for me, this is the case of a lifetime, or how I quit my day job and made my first indie game. So Jenny LeClue is a handmade narrative adventure game with a focus on choosiness, friendship, and detectiving. It's a game that I had in my head a long time and dreamed about making. And to give you a sense of that, I want to show you the vibe, see if I can show you that trailer for it. I think I have to kind of swap things out here. Hold on. And I'll play the launch trailer. So you get, or the original launch trailer, so you get a sense of the game. Yeah. there you go. So that's the initial kind of launch trailer. That's from the Switch. So hopefully that gives you a sense of the kind of the sense of sort of charm, but also sort of serious epicness we were also going for in the game. Let me switch back to my presentation. This is fun, switching back and forth. So yeah, so in thinking about making Jenny LeClue, a big question for us were what were our goals when we made the game? And first, we wanted to create this kind of beautiful handcrafted world. We wanted to create these characters that, although they were visually 2D, had depth and dimension to them, felt like they were living characters with their own sort of problems and desires and goals. We wanted to create this meta story. If you get from the trailer, there's this author writing these chapter books that actually is the world Jenny lives in, but also she's living her own personal life and this kind of epic story. And then we wanted to create a diverse cast of characters and locations. So to give you a kind of overview of the timeline, again, Jenny has been in my brain for a long time, and I think the first nugget of an idea for Jenny LeClue happened in 2005. It was originally just sort of a joke idea for a sort of crime procedural animated show. And then in 2011, I think I created the first concept images and the first sort of written pitch for the game. It was very short. And then fall of 2014, we crowdfunded the game on Kickstarter. And then 2014 to 2019 was our development time, aka the black hole. And like Albertine said, that's when we showed at PAX East, GDC. During the development, we took the game to all these events, which was amazing, but also a lot of work too. And then in the fall of 2019, we self-published and released Jenny LeClue as an Apple Arcade launch title, as well as on Steam and GOG. And in 2020, we released the Spoken Secrets edition. That's where we added voice acting, which I'll show you in another trailer later. And we released the Nintendo Switch version of the game. And as of 2021, that's now, the game has moved over 500,000 units, which is just to us unbelievable and amazing and very humbling in the best way. And of course, we have started work on Jenny LeClue Part 2. So that's just a rough sense of how long this game has been in development in my brain. It's a long time. So let's start at chapter 1, the backstory. I know you know a little bit about who I am, but I'm Joe Russ. That is a lovely illustration of me by a friend from Twitter. I'm an animator, illustrator, game designer, writer, marketer, and business dude, aka an indie game developer. I'm the owner of Mografi. That's my sort of indie studio. And I love tiny things, cookies, and our doggy Tilly, who you can see there. Again, Mografi is my company. Our mantra's that we want to handcraft emotional narratives, whatever the medium, and make beautiful, epic worlds for players of all ages. So how did I get here? What's my background? It's not in video games, even though I've always played video games. So I actually went to college for motion design, which at the time I think was called broadcast design and motion graphics. And I actually spent about 10 years in New York City doing freelance motion design and creative direction for big corporate clients like Disney and Samsung and Target and all of those things, as well as like installation things. And that was, able to pay for living in an expensive city like New York, which was wonderful, but it wasn't necessarily creatively fulfilling for me. So around the time I turned 30, I was looking for kind of a different, take a different direction, maybe be able to work some more on some of my personal projects. So a teaching opportunity came up at Ringling College of Art and Design. They had a burgeoning motion design program, and they were looking for experienced people from the field to help teach and build the program. So I actually moved to Florida to teach motion design. And while I loved it, after about a year, and I loved teaching the students, like I really did genuinely love it, it was just always, I had a bunch of things, creative projects I wanted to try. And I thought it's kind of a now or never time. So I actually quit my teaching job and took the leap of faith to try to make my own first indie game, Jenny LeClue. So where did she come from? Again, she started life as this little seedling of an idea, of almost a joke idea for an animated show. And then that grew into the idea of like an interactive book for kind of iPads or even computers, inspired by the Flying Books of Morris Lesmore, which was an app based on an Oscar-winning short film. And eventually that evolved into sort of a full-fledged adventure game idea. And visually, you can see here this image on the left. That's actually the very first kind of concept image I created in 2011. And you can see from the trailer that the art style has evolved and changed, but you can still see the kind of core aesthetic is in there already. And for me, when I made that, it was about creating a response visually to the kind of polished, shiny 3D client work I was making for kind of big companies. And I wanted to create something really, as a counter to that, for me, something very graphic and colorful and sort of organic in feeling, even if it was made digitally. And so that's sort of what came out organically out of that. Sorry, my phone just fell off the table. I was inspired by listening to old time radio dramas growing up and reading Nancy Drew books, of course, and pretty much all of David Lynch's work, films like Blue Velvet, and of course Twin Peaks, and lots of anime and animation inspired Jenny LeClue and kind of all the work I do. And of course, I wanted to merge elements of my favorite genres, mystery, sci-fi, and horror. So here are some of those early concept images of the game. You can see the title was even different originally, and a lot of the environments I was imagining initially as completely 3D when I was first kind of trying to figure out what it would look like. Ultimately, they became sort of 2.5D in the final game with a few specific 3D models when needed. Here's some more concept art, sort of environment designs, ideas for locations and possible layout of what the town could look like so we could figure out kind of where things take place and how those interact. So that brings us to chapter 2, laying the foundation. So first, I quit my job. So the first question was, how are we going to pay for this? And of course, when I say we, I brought on Ben Tillett, who is the other kind of core part of our 2-person team who made Jenny LeClue. And we needed a way to at least pay for our cost of living and stuff when we were working on this and not working for anyone else. And so for me, the obvious choice was crowdfunding. It's certainly tougher now than it was 6 years ago, 5 years ago. But I had previously crowdfunded Fathoms, my animated short film, so I was familiar with it, comfortable with the idea of doing it, and knew at least some of the ins and outs, even though it definitely is constantly evolving. And for us, it was a great chance to engage with an audience, get feedback, create awareness, because I wasn't some kind of influencer kind of social media maven. So for me, it was also a platform where you could try to build awareness for the game. And it's a good kind of public litmus test for the commercial value or appeal of the game to see if people actually were interested in the project. So of course, before we made the Kickstarter, all we had were those kind of concept images and a few ideas of what Jenny's World could look like kind of at the high level. So we needed to make a teaser trailer, a concept trailer, something that was a proof of concept of what the game could look like, and was flashy and showed, the appeal to potential backers on Kickstarter. And to help with that, I had some former students who were really excited that I was doing this. And so I brought them on for paid mentorships, because I obviously believe in paying people. And part of that was they got professional experience and I got help on putting the trailer together and concept art. And they're super talented and super motivated. And I think it was just a good relationship in a way that I could still be teaching while also working on this project. So let me show you the concept trailer we made for the Kickstarter. See if I can pull that up. 2 seconds. Oh, I don't have to stop presenting. Okay. It's complicated, but it's working.
Doing great.
Right. Thanks. Okay, see if this plays.
Oh, hello. I'm Arthur K. Finkelstein, homemade jam enthusiast, Wildlife Dental Society member, and author of Jenny LeClue. The greatest choose-your-own-adventure novel series in the world! And now I want you to help me write her biggest adventure yet. Jenny LeClue, Detective Roo, an interactive adventure game where you control the story. Hey, you're not supposed to see that yet. Spoiler alert! As I was saying, we'll explore the town of Arthurton, a world rich with characters, like Jenny LeClue. When her mother is accused of murder, Jenny takes on the case of her life. And soon she discovers nothing is what it seems. A choose-your-own-adventure game with choosiness on a massive scale. Crack the case. Save your family. Unearth Arthurton's dark secrets. And don't forget to floss. Help make Jenny's story possible on Kickstarter. What?
Fun fact, the voice of the author is actually Ben, who is super talented and obviously did all of the other stuff in the game, but also is the voice of the author, which is wonderful. So yeah, so you can see obviously reflections of that still in the trailer I showed before, but you can see we were really trying to sell the tone of that it's got a charm and a whimsy and a silliness, but also that there's sort of some serious drama potentially happening. Hopefully we did a good job of communicating that. So you already saw that, but how did the Kickstarter campaign go? It was successful because, you know, here we are, we've got Jenny LeClue. We reached nearly 4,000 backers, raised over $105,000. And, you know, part of how we did that is we took the 30-day campaign extremely seriously, treated it as a full-time job, just focused specifically on marketing and PR. We, you know, hounded our friends and family, asked them to back the project, share the project, you know, tell everyone in the world about it. And I specifically crafted sort of PR kind of emails, continuously trying to reach gaming and press sites. And we were able to get pretty good coverage. And I know it's definitely harder to get that coverage, even harder now. But you know, it's still worth trying at least. So we've raised some money. What do we do now? And this is where the long, slow build of the game begins. And this is where I think of two of my favorite quotes, which are, you know, a snail climbing a mountain, but slowly 1 inch at a time. And, you know, it's a long and bumpy ride. So thinking about building a world 1 brick at a time. First, Ben and I really went into the backstory of the universe. So it was tons and tons of writing, and he was in London at the time, and I'm in Florida. And so we used Google Docs and, you know, would be on audio chat or whatever. And we were just trying to figure out where the story should start and how much we kind of needed to know about the world already to figure out why the events were happening in the story when they were happening. So we did a ton of writing, probably too much. And then we decided that trailer we made, the Kickstarter, that was all After Effects animation. We didn't have a game. We hadn't even picked a game engine yet. So we needed to make an actual functioning game prototype, at least for ourselves. And then we decided to also make it as a playable teaser that other people could play, so it had more value than that. So there's an image from it. For us, that was a great way to test the kind of, if we were able to keep the atmosphere once it was in an engine and get familiar with, we ultimately used Unreal. figure out the sort of scope of the game and think about technical issues. And ultimately that became, the playable teaser is the demo that we showed at every single convention and event over those 5 years. So even though we kept tweaking it, kind of modifying it for different events, we were able to get more value out of that by publicly releasing it for free, but also taking it to events. And that was wonderful for feedback. So I'll just show you a little, sorry, I just keep switching back and forth. I'll show you a little teaser of the playable teaser, which is short, but I think, again, good to see kind of what that felt like if you haven't played it. Let's play it. So there you go. So just a quick tease of the teaser, and you can see that's all now in Game Engine now, but trying to stay true to the aesthetic of what we made in the concept, the Kickstarter trailer, as well as figure out technically how that could work in a game engine and how we were going to build this into a kind of a bigger thing. So switching back, hold on. Yeah, so we released the playable teaser for free, and we gave it to people as part of building our email marketing list. We made it so it also had touch controls, controller support, and even mouse and keyboard support, I believe, so we could get a sense of how making a game we wanted to be on every platform would work. We targeted about 45 minutes of gameplay, had kind of one full kind of narrative swoop and a puzzle to solve, or a main puzzle. So we ended up with about 42,000 unique play sessions across platforms, across devices, and players spent almost 9,000 hours playing the game. That's more than a year. And of course, at the end of this, for some reason, we realized we wanted to make the scope of the game even bigger in our naive ambitions. So that brings us to chapter 3, the long and winding road. So this is where we get into the real development time. This is this like 4-year dark hole we fell into of just figuring out how to make this game. So, you know, there's a common saying, good, fast, and cheap, pick 2. So if it's not already clear, we picked good and cheap. We didn't have a ton of money. That money we had raised on the Kickstarter needed to pay for rewards as well as, you know, taxes and all that, and our cost of living during the production time. So we had to keep things really lean. And here you can see a funny view of my office that's been working away. That's probably the cleanest it's been in years, but you get an idea of our kind of setup. That's just a bedroom in my house. That's where most of the game was made. So, you know, we're this tiny team of 2, and we wanted to make the game even bigger than what we had done in the playable teaser scale-wise. So instead of it being almost like an episodic game, we wanted it to be almost like releasing a whole season of a game. So we needed to figure out sort of smart solutions for that. So one of the first things we came up with were modular art kits for the environments and props. So a little bit like Lego bricks, how the individual pieces can be really generic or have specific purposes, but when you put them together, you can create all sorts of structures and environments. We thought of it that way. So we broke down kind of the environmental elements into their pieces, and, you know, doing that allowed us to reuse them to build big elements and use across different scenes. And the more bits we made, the more things we could combine to create new bits in Unity. This also was important because the game is very texture heavy because of all the art. There's very little 3D. It's all kind of flat planes with, you know, sprites. And so we wanted to keep the memory footprint down so the game would run just as well as on an iPhone 5 as it would on someone's desktop or a console. So here's another tool we kind of created for this kind of modular art. This was a tool called Fur2D we got on the asset store that's inspired by the Ubi art engine, which they use this kind of terrain editing to make their environments huge in the game. And so you can see the textures above. So you can see, for example, the pipes, and then using the tool in engine below to make a pipe, and you can see how as I'm moving the spline, it's sort of randomizing the parts that it's composed of, and that's coming from all those bits in that one texture that are all designed to seamlessly blend together on their edges so that you can create a ton of variety. And then you can see on the right at the bottom there where we have this sort of mines, kind of rocky terrain we've created using this tool. And so you can see we have the fill texture on the right that is seamlessly tiling to create all the center of the kind of rocks, and then all the edges are defined by these few elements here that are, again, seamlessly tiled together and then kind of intelligently placed based on the angle of the terrain, if that makes sense. Here's another example where you can see the sort of texture atlases, and at the bottom you can see this is actual game view of the campus quad. And so on the left above we have this sort of shared outdoor textures, so almost every outdoor scene uses elements from this, and you can see there's plants, elements that make up the trees and rocks, and those all get layered together in different combinations and scales, and and you can use them everywhere because they're kind of generic. But then we have scene specific textures that in this case only kind of apply to this scene, and their scales aren't kind of accurate to the world, they're accurate to kind of how big and high resolution they need to be for the screen. So if something's closer to the viewer, it's going to be a higher res element. So you can see the library is small because it's in the background. So it's, the pumpkin we have is a similar size to the library. Here's some more concept art to end game environments and elements and props. So you can see kind of the building on the left you can see how we stay pretty true to the sketch, but actually the house itself is made of just a few kind of bits that are all combined and sort of not procedurally, but laid out from their sort of modular bits, and create this huge kind of high-res house in game that the camera can push really close in on, but doesn't take up that much memory and still stays very true to the design of the original concept. Because in the Kickstarter and the playable teaser, all that stuff were sort of flattened images that we custom made, coming from Photoshop, and that was going to be too big of a memory footprint to do that and kind of have these huge worlds. So some other kind of smart tools we would use is like, here's again, I'd made a seamless texture for a waterfall that seamlessly tiles top to bottom. And then we sort of, using our kind of wind tool, we kind of make it undulate a little bit like water. And then we literally just put it together in 3D space and offset the vertical motion of that texture. And then on the right, you can see how that kind of all comes together in the sewer scene, how we kind of stack these modular bits that are repeated and then bring it all together with color grading and some post effects to really establish and push the kind of mood we want in the scene. Here's another examples on the right. You can see the author's scene, his office essentially. Again, you can see all the bits that are basically tiled and modular being stacked, and then how we kind of bring it all again together with the color grading. On the left, we created a custom kind of hand painted lighting textures that allowed us to control the style of the lighting for Jenny. So we don't use any real lights in the game. It's all our kind of faux 2D lights. And we created this tool that allows us to kind of modify the properties of these sort of faux lights, and then create kind of fake lights in each scene that allowed us to transition the different states of that. So I said before, in the middle of all this development, we were just trying to make this game. We had to go around and promote the game, and we wanted to get the word out and make connections, which, had a lot of positives, had a lot of benefits, but also came with its own costs. So it was certainly great for learning from more experienced devs, especially because we were green. I mean, we had zero experience at game dev. Great for building relationships, networking with potential partners and publishers, especially at the less public events. There would be, Nintendo and Sony representatives there, and games press, and it was pretty easy to connect with people that way. It also gave us a chance. I mean, we pitched the game to probably a couple thousand people by the time we were done, so that really forced us to think about how to present the game and how people perceived it and what they thought of it. And of course, fulfilling childhood dreams. If you know who Tim Schafer is of Double Fine, That's him playing our playable teaser at Day of the Devs in San Francisco, which is just crazy for us in the best way. But on the downside, there's only 2 of us, so it took away from our development time because either one of us or both of us would have to be at one of these events, which means we weren't working on the game. And of course, it still cost a lot of money to get to these events, to find somewhere to stay, to pay for the setup. And events like PAX East were super inspiring, but I'm not really clear the kind of consumer impact it had on increasing kind of the reach of our game. So just like we thought about doing modular environments and props, we also thought about bringing that idea to our characters, because in the playable teaser, Jenny was animated in After Effects and rendered out as sprites, and we realized we had a problem that if we wanted close-ups and we wanted our characters, and we have a bunch of characters, not just Jenny now, we wanted to feel like an animated TV show or movie and be very expressive. We wanted the camera to be able to push in really close and again, have a game that runs on an iPhone 4. And so we needed to think about, like you can see here in the playable teaser, just Jenny's walk and run cycles take up a whole texture, and she's tiny because we have to kind of render out these frames and they're kind of baked as they are. So we took from, of course, 3D animation does kind of skeletally rigged characters and then modifies their positions kind of in real time. So we wanted to apply that to 2D characters in the game instead of just using baked sprites. So on the right, you can actually see the texture that represents Jenny in the final game. And it's basically, she gets sort of put together like a cutout paper doll, and then animated in 2D space, but she's built like a 3D character, but she's animated, on a 2D plane. And again, we wanted to build layered animations that we could stack and loop and combine and create more complex expressive characters from. So again, with this modular character animation, you can see here on the left, the author, he's doing different kind of looping poses here, along with an idle animation. On the right, here's an example of a simple rig I created for a kind of monster that haunts Jenny's nightmares. And then here's sort of how we put it all together. Here's Jenny, she's got a talking loop animation playing here, and you can see me sort of cycling between different kinds of poses she could do while talking to someone. And then we bring all those animations into the game. We create kind of combinations and presets for them. And then we had a sort of dialogue editor that allowed us to sort of sequence different expressions and combinations of animations at once in a really simple way, and time them along with the dialogue so it felt really responsive and kind of alive in the performance of the character. And then here you can see an example of Jenny talking to a crow and how that sort of all comes together. So it just hopefully just feels like a little bit of an animated TV show or a movie timed along to the dialogue. So that brings us to chapter 4. Late in the development of the game, we had a major plot twist. Apple came into our lives. It was an amazing once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that they brought to us. Again, I can't talk too much about the specifics because of NDAs, but basically they invited us to bring Jenny LeClue, launch Jenny LeClue as one of their Apple Arcade launch titles. And that's where I definitely think luck is preparation plus opportunity. We had been preparing this game for forever, and here comes this amazing opportunity. And we've been looking for a good publisher, and we hadn't found a good fit. No one had seemed like they were genuinely interested in making the game successful rather than just sort of taking a cut of it. So Apple was a sort of perfect partner, even though they weren't a publisher, but it was a perfect kind of partnership that came along. And even then, we still negotiated with them because we were in a good place to do that. We weren't beholden to anyone else. So, and again, they came to us and I asked them, like, how did you find us? Because we're not some huge AAA game. We're not some sort of breakout social media smash or whatever. And they said they had just been following our game on Twitter for a long time, and they were a big fan of it, and they loved it, and it just seemed like a great opportunity to work together. So that was really amazing, and it was proof that us starting kind of our social media marketing early, even before the Kickstarter, was valuable, and consistently updating it, even if we didn't always have new, interesting stuff to say. So here's just a few images of the kind of, this stuff it still blows my mind when I see this stuff. It feels so unreal, but even Apple's marketing team really seemed to like our game. So, you know, it was featured in the keynote, in their marketing emails when Apple Arcade launched, in their kiosk in stores all over the world, in their print marketing, in their banner. Like it really still it doesn't, none of that feels real. So, you know, it's this amazing once in a lifetime opportunity, and it was wonderful. But again, it also came with its own benefits and challenges. So on the positive, we were able to hire other people to help us finish on time. We were able to hire Scientific, who did the music for Oxenfree. He's awesome. We were able to add full voice acting and, you know, all that stuff I just showed you. It was unreal seeing Jenny everywhere in the best way. But at the same time, it pushed our release back by another 6 months at the end of a really long project. We'd never worked on a project this long before. And, you know, it was like running a sprint at the end of a really long marathon. It was a lot. So we also needed to localize the game in 14 languages. This is a game with over 50,000 lines of dialogue. And we had originally built it to only be in English. And you know, this was a lot to kind of reconfigure for that. But at the same time, it was a positive because it also meant even more people could play it and enjoy it because it was such a text-driven game. And that now applies to all platforms, not just Apple Arcade. Apple did also want lots of documentation, but it makes sense to me. You know, they wanted proof that we could create schedules and budgets and deliver on time and had the professional business aspects, not just the creative. And so that was an important part of the relationship. Had to cut a few features, none of them major, but there were some, we had to make some compromises. And of course, like all of that was stressful as we were already exhausted. We've been working 6.5 days a week, nonstop. And, you know, it was a lot. So we had to be thoughtful of how we did that. So that brings us to chapter 5. The end is just the beginning again. So releasing our first game, we called the month leading up to release the Cone of Chaos, where we were sleeping, we were sleeping, we were eating, we were working, but I can't remember anything that actually happened during that time. It was so crazy. And then when we released the game, we realized that releasing isn't a finish line, it's just the start of a new race. You know, we had to put on our tech support hats and our bug fixing hats and our business hats, making relationships for other platforms and porting, and then marketing had to go into full overtime. And there were events we had to kind of track down because now we actually had a game we could finally sell people. So we definitely want to make sure we're actually firing on all cylinders and reaching people. So here's where I would love to show you the Spoken Secrets Edition trailer of the game, which is sort of the final form Jenny took. And you're going to see certainly some repeat footage, but I think it's worth it just to hear the wonderful voice acting. So let's see if this will play.
This is my chance. The case of a lifetime.
I must write something different, something darker.
I'm not a kid anymore. I have to make my own choices. No. Never move the victim.
The inquisitive spirit is a mighty thing, Jenny. And nothing is as important as the truth.
You're wearing a dead man's shirt.
You didn't need it anymore.
All I care about is keeping this town crime-free.
The only crime here is that haircut.
You are a dead body. Dead bodies don't talk.
Jenny, hi!
I suspected myself for quite some time, but I couldn't have done it.
A little birdie told me I'd find 3 unruly kids out after curfew.
The Enigma Report investigation starts now.
What was I thinking? I've gone too far.
It's like a creepier version of Dr. Benderson's office. You'll never catch us, Copper! There comes a time when every young woman has to chart her own course.
But does it have to be right now?
The sewer grate is talking.
Yes. No.
Wow, this guy's a real chatterbox. I don't believe in ghosts. And the tall tales of a bunch of airheads won't change my mind. This whole town is dead, stuck in the past. Where's the ambition, the sense of adventure?
Are we still talking about basketball?
Yeah. So there you go. I thought that was worth it. Okay, almost done. I know we're running long here, but nearly there. So much I could share. I'm just trying to give you a high-level overview of the whole thing. So the reception of the game was mostly positive, but the press coverage specifically for Jenny LeClue was pretty quiet, and that was really a side effect of the Apple Arcade launching, because they released, 60 some odd amazing games, and only so many could get sort of specific coverage. But we had tons of adorable fan art and wonderful emails and comments and tweets from people. And again, over time, we've had tons and tons of people play the game. And as part of being this sort of quietly successful game, but not big in sort of the press and all the social media, it's allowed us to continue reaching new audiences. I saw even a couple weeks ago, a YouTuber did a wonderful video essay on this great game you haven't played, but you should, and that was our game. So in summary, make a proof of concept or a prototype. In our case, we thought it was important to make it public, make it part of the Kickstarter so that we could really test the sort of market viability, work hard, also smart. We definitely worked hard, but we tried to find ways to make a game that was bigger, at least in perception, than the size of our team. And then work for the love, but business for the money, which is, we were making our dream game, but always had the commercial and business aspects in mind. And we sweat the boring stuff. Again, consistent and early marketing for the game. Even though we didn't have any money, we still did the work. And any specific or potential business opportunities, we always took very seriously, engaged with, and be open to opportunities you might not have even imagined. So that is a quick overview of Jenny LeClue Detective-oo. Thank you. I'm Joe. You can find me on Twitter, Mografi Joe. Ben is voice of Ben, and Jenny LeClue is on Nintendo Switch, Apple Arcade, and Steam. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe. That was a pleasure to watch, and I loved all that you included all the different trailers from very early on in the project all the way up till now, because I wanted people to see that change, especially when voice actors were added, because to me that just adds so much to an incredible experience.
Yeah, I think it makes a big difference.
We've got some questions in the Q&A. I'm going to kind of start you off with one of mine, and then we're going to launch into the ones that have been popped into the chat. So Arthurton is filled with so much life. That's one of the things I really like about it. It feels like every blade of grass and every sign, every leaf, every character has a little bit of movement and sway to it. And, whenever I've played the game, I can almost picture you saying to yourself, if you're watching like a run cycle, I can almost picture you saying something like, oh, I just need to tweak the way her coat moves just a little bit more, and going in and making those tweaks. And so I'm wondering, as a game developer, how do you stop yourself from endlessly tweaking things on your project? How do you come to that decision when an asset is done or when a project is done? Like, what is that line for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're terrible at that. I think Ben and I are both very detail-oriented people, so it's very easy to go down that rabbit hole of tweaking something, especially because that's such an easy place to get into like a flow state and kind of go on autopilot. And that's just, for us, was a lot about trying to create deadlines, and as much as we could keep making kind of structure things where we try to put on our project manager hat and say like, hey, like you need to get the scene finished in 3 days. So like, what are the top 3 things you need to do before you start tweaking and twiddling every little thing? And so you can see probably the earliest scenes we made in the game are like way, way more polished, or I would say probably over polished compared to some of the last scenes we made, because by the end we had a better sense of where to spend the time we did have. But it was our first big game, so we definitely spent a lot of time whittling away on things, which was fun and satisfying. But yeah, that's always a tough question, because it's like you can't wear the different hats at the same time. You can't be the animator and the creative director and the project manager all at once. So the big challenge is making sure you switch those things. And for me specifically, about halfway through the production, I started blocking out my days. So I would actually list hour blocks of work time, and I would try to put a specific task into those blocks. So if I was going way over, then I should start to be accountable that like, hey, is this stuff that's actually important right now? Or are you just having fun fiddling? And, wasn't always successful because we were the only kind of people running and directing that. But at least we tried to kind of keep some kind of structure to help keep us at least a little bit in line. I'm sure Ben would say we failed miserably, but we had a lot of fun and we definitely learned a lot. So like Jenny LeClue too, I think we would be a lot better at knowing when and where to fiddle and when to leave things alone.
Right, that hindsight is such a powerful thing to have coming at it this time. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's hard to know what parts of the game are actually add the perceived value versus what parts you spend all the time on. And again, it's super obvious when it's done, but not while you're doing it, where you're also trying to define what it needs to be and what are the kind of important things about it.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to get that external perspective too. It's almost like you're too close to it, and with time later on, it becomes so much more clear. That was an amazing answer. Thank you. That's so interesting hearing about just the processes that you and Ben developed while you were working on the project. So I'll hop right into our lovely Q&A here, and I'll start from the very first one that was popped in the chat. Matt Welk, who is from Ubisoft Winnipeg here, wants to know, did you guys get any flack from the Choose Your Own Adventure people?
Yes.
He heard something about them being strict about that phrase.
Yeah. They, the people who own the copyright or trademark to that, for those Choose Your Own Adventure books, reached out to us after the Kickstarter and were like, can you not ever say that again? Because, that's infringing our rights. They didn't necessarily get to threatening legal action or anything. And you could see it was still in the original Kickstarter trailer, but we removed it in later trailers. But yeah, they're very protective of it. But again, I'm just always like thinking about the business aspect. So I was like, instead of just threatening us, asking us to like drop that, why don't we talk about making like a Jenny LeClue Choose Your Own Adventure book? I mean, the game takes place in a fictional book, so it's already halfway there. But I think at this point, they've kind of moved on from actually making new things and mostly kind of protecting the Choose Your Own Adventure title or whatever. So it was kind of funny and strange to me, but it was fine in the end.
Awesome. Yeah, that would stress me out a lot. So kudos to you for handling that with so much grace. David West would like to know, what was it like designing for touch and non-touch gameplay at the same time? Was it easy, or did it take a lot of effort to plan that out?
Yeah, I think that's again where we thought it was important to, that's a great question. It was important for us to do that in the prototype, the playable teaser as well, because we weren't sure how painful it was going to be to make a game that works for controller, keyboard, and touch controls. But we were always thinking about it from the beginning, and I think that helped a lot because, touch controls need to be a lot, I guess, simpler. They need to be more intuitive and more kind of, intuitive, I guess. I don't know. And so it helped that we were thinking about that from the beginning, but there definitely were some kind of specific puzzles and sort of mini games where it was a bit of a challenge. And even now, I think there's one puzzle in the game that the way it works is you're still not super happy with how the touch controls work, but you kind of do the best you can. And we've even modified the touch controls after release to make them even a little bit friendlier to touch players, because once you had hundreds of thousands of people playing the game, you could get a better sense of what was working on a large scale and what wasn't, because we play tested a lot, but our team of play testers was like 3 people, so it was kind of our best guess. So it was challenging, but I think it helped a lot that we thought about it from the beginning versus kind of band-aiding it on at the end, because we knew we wanted to release, like, my favorite way to play games is often on the iPad, so I wanted it to feel just as good there as on a Switch or a PC.
Awesome. Yeah, it's funny about playtesting. You, like, in my experience, I find I could playtest something to death and think that I've thought about every possible edge case and every possible way that someone might play it, and then as soon as it gets into the hands of the public, they end up playing it in ways that you had not anticipated. You're like, oh, that's how you're gonna play. Okay.
Yeah,
and there's
then
a
you have
lot to learn from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you have to think about, do you want to modify your systems to support someone who plays an entirely different way than you could even comprehend? Or do you want to try to like better helpfully nudge them towards what you want them to do? And sometimes it's definitely best to support as many options as possible, but sometimes you really want to kind of control the experience. And sometimes it's like, yeah, how do you politely nudge people without frustrating them? And that's such a hard line to know, because also playtesting, you can't just ask people leading questions, because then you're going to get leading answers. And once someone's playtested something once, their reactions aren't going to be genuine, because they know now what to expect.
Right. Yeah, that's such a good point. So Matt Welk has another question for you. He wants to know more about that sweet custom lighting system. What can you share with us about it?
I don't know if working at Ubisoft, if he knows anyone who worked on the Ubi Art engine thing, but I mean, the whole thing is basically us trying to recreate that. So we watched some videos we saw of them demoing their engine for Rayman Legends, I think. And yeah, it just uses kind of vertex lighting on the meshes, and we just have kind of fake lights and fill and gradient tools that you can add to these meshes. And we have sort of global and local lights. I mean, they're not lights, but we use them to paint and to add and remove light to the vertex shader part of our images. And just let us really do that in real time, but again, keep the game really kind of low, like technically low cost. So that, I mean, literally the game can run on an iPhone 4, which now iPhones are really powerful. It's not as much of a deal, but at the time, I mean, that really was a lot to ask. Even our game is a 2.5D or 2D game, but still, if we wanted it to be high fidelity and beautiful and have all these post effects, to be really conscious of kind of your expensive, what's expensive in your game. And so, yeah, our mesh kind of environment tool of being able to paint these kind of baked faux lights, and the same with Jenny, her kind of hand painted texture that's again just in our shader, and it reacts to kind of little environmental objects. It was part of kind of keeping that efficient. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you for giving us some more info about that, because
basically go on YouTube and go on YouTube and look up the UbiArt engine. Theirs is the AAA version of what we have, and that's such a brilliant way to kind of do things. Like, I mean, honestly, for us, that idea, like being able to understand that way of breaking down a giant environment for us was a sea change. Because again, like in the playable teaser, we just made images in Photoshop and the layers and rendered them out, and it's like, how are we going to make an environment that's a mile long or whatever in real world space, but made of a few Photoshop elements? And it's like, we need some tools to really solve that, and it was such a great inspiration.
Yeah, it's incredibly impressive to me, because I was working at a studio that was making mobile games back when I first learned of Jenny LeClue in 2014. And oh wow, do I ever remember the struggle for trying to create a great game that would run on so many different pieces of hardware. We were also supporting Android and like Kindle
products, which is even harder.
Yeah, because device fragmentation is intense. But yeah, like I mean, iPhones and iPads are so fast now. They're incredible. Yeah, like my fiance's iPad is like faster than like the chip in it is way faster than the chip in my work computer.
Yeah, I was gonna say, now I guess it doesn't matter as much, but at the time at least it was its own kind of hurdle. And for me, the core idea was to make the experience the same for players on any platform, so that it wasn't some kind of downgrade of the game. And again, building it from the ground up, knowing we wanted it to run on an iPhone 4 or whatever, as well as a big screen TV or a desktop computer, is like that allowed us to make smart choices and kind of optimize the game with the textures and the art and the assets so that it could work in all those, but still look beautiful and stay true to the kind of the aesthetic I wanted.
That's so impressive. Yeah, I love that was such a huge factor for you from the very beginning. So Brendan, hi Brendan, wants to know, did you use any tools or libraries for managing story and or dialogue? I'm also very curious to know this.
Oh yeah, we again, part of being smart, I didn't even get to talk about, but yeah, we used Unity, and they have the Unity asset store. So we definitely used a bunch of off-the-shelf assets, even though we heavily modified most of them. So I think we used an engine for dialogue called, I think it's called Dialogue Editor or something. It has a generic name, but I think it's a very popular tool. And so Ben heavily modified that and made widgets around it for us. But the core kind of code base was built around that. And that was super helpful because it meant we didn't have to spend all the time like reinventing the basics of a dialogue engine when obviously that's a really common thing at this point. So anything like that, we tried to find a tool that at least got us started. So we weren't, we used, I think, the Corgi engine to get our platforming elements together and then heavily modified that. We used the dialogue editor. Unity didn't have any of the tools it has now. So like we needed a cutscene editor because we were so used to editing in like Premiere or like After Effects. So we needed something to make cutscenes nicely. So, oh my gosh, now I can't even remember what that tool's called. But yeah, we got a bunch of tools and then modified them to suit the game, but it helped save us a lot of time and they're all shockingly affordable. So it also was like, I mean, if we hired those people to make those things for us, it would have cost a ton of money and taken weeks, but they had already done it. So yeah, we definitely used other tools. And then Ben, who is brilliant, and me kind of demanding, was really great at modifying them for our game and my specific wants or needs in using the engine to build the world, and then us sort of even kind of modifying the UI so it was a little bit more pleasing to use, since we definitely spent thousands of hours using these tools. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's interesting because it's always impressive and very amazing for a studio to be able to make their own tools. But if there's already an asset or there's already something on the asset store that meets your needs that can be modified to fit your use case, I mean, why not work smarter, not harder, right?
Yeah, exactly. And again, we were like, we know this thing is a car. We're not trying to invent jetpacks. So like, why it's not smart for us to spend time figuring out how wheels work when we know a guy down the street who's like, I can show you, it's really simple. I've been doing this for decades. And it's like, cool. If we were making something super experimental, totally out there, then that's different. But the core parts of the game, yeah, we're using a lot of familiar fundamental tools that have been, and concepts that have been around, and it was just bringing those together.
That's excellent. I think you've inspired me to hop on the asset store tonight and take a look at what new things are there that I may not have known about.
Yeah, there's so much stuff.
Jumping back into our Q&A, Rebecca Harrison. Hi, Rebecca. Wants to know, I saw that you worked with Future Friends Games PR. How long did you guys work together, and did you find that relationship helpful? That's a great question.
Yeah, we brought them on. They're kind of the only marketing money we spent besides going to events. And again, we didn't have much money. We used them before Apple had come along. So, and then of course, Apple was really big on them handling all their PR stuff, of course. And, they have infinite money to do that. But I thought they were really great to work with. I thought they were really great at what they did, and they helped us, especially when I didn't have time, put together PR emails and reach out to everyone and get keys out to people. I think the difficulty is being a small game in a, AAA world and all of that, and with streaming and everything, and we were making a niche game. It was still very hard to kind of get any visibility out of that. And I think they did the best they can, but it was like, again, we were releasing as an Apple launch title, which is great, but also meant literally they were competing against 60 other indie, AA, and AAA games that all released at the same time. So they had kind of the impossible task of trying to get some visibility with that from their end. And I think they did an amazing job considering, but like it was a sort of impossible ask. So, I mean, I would definitely work with them again. It's just the situation made it complicated. And I certainly was disappointed at the time, but again, that's where I wanted to say kind of the long tail, it didn't matter. And our game being kind of a sleeper hit means that there's just always more people to discover the game, and it's not like a one and done thing. It's like we just keep quietly reaching more and more people. And we don't have the money to pay a PR team to do that for 3 years, but if we did, we would have paid them to help us still be doing that now.
Right, thank you. Yeah, I think it's social media and PR is such a an important component of indie game development that I think sometimes in talks like these doesn't get brought up maybe when it should. So I think that's super helpful that you answered that, and thank you so much, Rebecca, for asking that. Matt Welkin with more good questions. Actually, a bunch of these questions are things I was going to ask you anyway, so this is excellent. Cool. Matt Welk would like to know, what part of the tech would you change for making the sequel? I'm curious about that as well. Are you still going to be working in Unity? Will you pursue crowdfunding again? What's your
we'll still be working in Unity. I mean, I think the big thing is we did all the work of building the foundation of our game world and the tools and the art and the technical as well as the creative parts. And I think if we switched engines, if we massively rehauled our tools, the problem would be then we're losing all the benefits of building that for the first game. So I think Ben would love to make new tools and completely start over so we can make everything much nicer. But at the end of the day, it's like, you know, I think of the Soviets using duct tape on the space station because it's like, hey, like we just need this thing to work and keep going. And to me, it's like, I think we'll have to modify our tools to be able to still work in the latest version of Unity so that the game can run on everything. But for me, it's like, I don't want to change the tools for this. And then I just want to create a few new tools to optimize the things we know take a lot of time and then reuse as much as we can. So like the great thing is like Jenny is designed, Jenny is rigged, Jenny is animated. She'll probably get some new animations for the second game, but we can reuse everything we've done and we understand the workflow for that. And being so tiny, that's a huge help because it means maybe instead of taking 5 years to make game 2, it takes 2 years of actual full production time with still a, kind of our small, tiny core team. And that's where it's actually important to me that we don't start over. But we're working on other game concepts as well. And I think those are where we'll look at different tools and saying, we'll take what we learned from Jenny LeClue and apply that to these things where it's like, okay, we spent a lot of time manually laying out elements. And we're really big on these kind of details. How can we make tools that specifically support me or whatever artist is doing those things to do it faster? And I think a big thing for us is we didn't have a good way to lay out a scene quickly that made sense for us so you could feel the kind of atmosphere and the vibe, but also play test the kind of interaction. And so for us, it's also about being able to create the environments quickly, but in a way that is not just like gray boxing a scene, so that it also you get some of the sense of the ambiance or the vibe of things. Because for me, it's like you can't sell the appeal of a game when it's a gray box. So I think mostly reusing our tools and then modifying and building a few new tools is the short version.
That's really exciting. Yeah, I'm glad that you've built so much that you can reuse that'll save you time, because I personally don't think I can wait 5 years for Jenny LeClue too. I will try to be patient, but yeah, I think we're all excited for more as soon as possible. So Philip, hi Philip, wants to know, were there any limitations that you ran into with the engine that you chose? Were there any times throughout development that you were kind of wishing you could change?
Interesting. I mean, I think the Unity engine for me always feels like it's kind of in beta, but I guess that's sort of the cost of doing business, and we weren't going to make our own game engine. I mean, there are definitely things, all sorts of things, but I think I just always thought of Unity as like a minivan where like, if you have the resources and the special needs, you could make like a race car that's really fast and really good at doing this one specific thing. But Unity is this like beautiful minivan that isn't going to go 0 to 60 in 2 seconds, but like it can kind of do everything and go everywhere, and it's kind of all purpose. And for us, the big benefit of that is it meant it's really reasonable. I don't want to say easy, but reasonable to port the game to all these different platforms. And again, being tiny, I just think about that benefit is like they're doing all the hard work of making sure the engine runs basically identically on all these different consoles and operating systems and devices, smartphones, etc. And so for me, the big thing was actually that it made our lives easier when it came time to make the game run on everything not just the PC, because again, we wanted it to be everywhere it could be. Yeah, and I'm sure if I brought Ben on, I'm sure he could tell you all the horrible problems of using Unity. But I guess I also got to distance myself a little by having him do majority of the code stuff. But yeah, I think all the issues were, like almost any game engine you would use, or if you made your own, it's just there's always limitations and complications and unforeseen things where like you plan for it to make sense, but the engine requires some really irrational way to do things because it was 3 things bolted onto each other over a period of 10 years. I think that's just part of the learning curve.
Yeah, there's always so much hubbub and back and forth and sometimes harsh words in the whole engine conversation, but ultimately
Yeah.
comes down to just what is going to serve your needs best for the project that you're working on, right?
Yeah,
and for me, that's all that matters. So yeah, it's really cool, and it's really encouraging as well, I think, for people who are trying to figure out that question for themselves.
Yeah. And now
sorry,
there's so many game engines you can use, which is also just worlds better, because I first tried to make a game around 2000, and it's like buying a programming book on make your own game engine, and it's literally starting from scratch. And now it's like, well, now you get to try them all for free and pick whatever feels best for the kind of, like you said, game or vibe you're going for. And it's like, it's just, you have a lot of options.
That's true. Yeah, it's such a different world now. So that's a really excellent thing for people who are maybe just coming into this. May Middleton, hello, wants to know, sorry I missed most of this presentation. Hopefully it'll be recorded. Maybe John can answer that in the chat. I was wondering if you're now working on Jenny 2, which you mentioned that you are, and when we potentially might expect that to grace our screen.
Yeah.
You might not be able to say that, I don't know.
Yeah, I have no idea at this time. We're still early in like pre-production on it. So, I mean, I probably should not say any date, because whatever it is, I'm going to be wrong. So in a couple years, maybe. But we're definitely working on it, and we're going to make part 2. I just don't know exactly when it'll happen.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. I knew that was going to be maybe a bit of a sensitive one for you, but again, I'm curious too, so it's important to ask.
And we have that scope ambition, where we always try to do way more than we should. So who knows how big it'll end up being.
Right. And just for May, John mentioned that it is in fact being recorded, so you will be able to watch us after the fact, which is great. We've got our final question in the chat, and then I'll see if any of the ones I was going to ask have not yet been answered, and I can pop into those. David West, hi David, wants to know, being a business badass and all, if you could go back to the Kickstarter, would you ask for more money, or did you find that it was enough to get you through to launch? Very good question.
Yeah, we definitely ended up using some of our own personal savings, because we ran the production much longer than we intended, and we ended up certainly spending a lot of money on going to events to promote the game. I think I would still ask the same amount of money, because of the position we were in, and the complexity of kind of consumer logic and dynamics of expecting things cheap and always assuming that they're these mass-produced kind of things. So you have to do that weird thing where you ask for sort of the least viable amount, but hope to get exponentially more, or at least in my opinion. And I think I would still probably have asked for a similar amount of money. But I think the difference is this time I definitely had naively overpromised the kind of range of rewards and physical rewards. So this time, if we did a crowdfunding campaign again for, say, Jenny LeClue 2, I just would offer many less rewards, or less painfully time-consuming ones. Like, we thought it was a really cool idea to let some people back at a higher level, and then have their character likeness, or their likeness appear as a character in the game, which was a cool idea, but we ended up spending so much time creating those characters, and then the actual issue was then having to figure out how to make sure they appeared in the game so that that was fulfilled as a reward, but also like didn't mess with the sort of story and character interactions. So we kind of needed to take these characters that were sort of designed based on real people and make sure they fit in the kind of story situations that were occurring. So I think I would ask the same amount, but I would sort of simplify the range of rewards we offered.
Yeah, that sounds so challenging. And again, similar to the engine conversation from before, the way we as game developers approach Kickstarters is so different now because we've learned so many lessons, both from, your own experiences as well as others. And now, there's endless GDC talks and all kinds of talks everywhere about the pitfalls of doing crowdfunding campaigns and the dangers of, physical backer rewards and all of these things.
And it's getting sued by backers. Yeah, and I think a big thing for us that we were big on, even though we took longer than we said we would, of course we did, is that we consistently communicated. Every single month I posted an update, and if people emailed me, I would respond at least within a day or two, and just never kind of leaving people hanging, so that they understood, like, this is happening, your money is being well spent, or at that point has already been spent, because we've gone on too long. But yeah, it's definitely evolved a ton, even from when we crowdfunded Jenny LeClue. And yeah, doing it now, like, I would probably even bring on PR people to help us, because it's an even bigger kind of challenge now as things have evolved.
Yeah, I would say running a Kickstarter is pretty much a full-time job in and of itself, completely separate from development. So the fact that you were running that while actively creating the project is, like, it's insane to me. That's very impressive. I don't know how you did it. I don't know how you slept, but it's
I don't know if we did. Yeah.
It's a blur now.
But the importance of, like, not just putting it out there and hoping it does well. Like, we were literally hustling every single day, especially during the middle of the campaign where the interest is kind of slumping because there's no ticking clock on it ending, and it's not exciting because it just was announced and everyone just saw it covered somewhere on their favorite gaming site. So, we were really scrambling, like, creatively thinking of new gaming sites to kind of reach out to, new people to partner with. We even did, like, matching fund days. So we would find someone who wanted to contribute like $1,000 and then just say, hey, for the next 48 hours, if you back the project, someone will match your pledge up to that amount. And it was like, we were just constantly just trying to think of, we don't have any money. What are creative ways we can sort of keep this going and keep engaging people during the campaign?
Right. And there's also that whole tactic I've seen, which I'm not sure if it's still employed, but it used to be a lot, where kind of folks who are game devs running Kickstarter campaigns around similar times as one another will kind of promote one another in their updates and in their comment threads and stuff, which is very heartwarming to see.
Yeah, definitely do that.
So I had mentioned that I was going to hop into my questions. I think most of mine have been covered. I maybe have one or two, but I know that John wants to hop back in. So welcome back, John.
Sure.
Hi. Wow, what a great presentation, and what excellent moderation and questions. This was a really, really good one. You think about your questions. I'm just going to announce our contest, or our giveaway. That we have two games, two copies of the game to give away to two individuals, either on Steam or Switch, or any other type of service that I can provide a digital code for. So to make it somewhat equitable, I am going to have two relatively easy questions that I'm going to announce right now. First one to respond in the chat. We'll get a copy. Let's say, what is a fictional town that Jenny LeClue resides in? That's the nice easy one. So if you've got the game, please don't enter. Oh, Rebecca Harrison gets it. Very nice. Okay, this one's a challenging one. What was the name of the character that Ben voiced in the game? Tick tock, tick tock. The author is his name, but what he has a real name.
Ooh.
I'll take first or last name. I'll give you a second to Google it. Jam Lover. Nope. Arthur is correct.
Nice.
Good.
In case you can't tell, he's so egotistical that he named the entire town in this world after himself.
So I will send I'll be in touch with both of you regarding the game, and if there's any more questions, I'm going to let this go because I know you indie game people like to talk about games, but I feel like I've done my part now. So I want to thank Joe, and I'll be here, but I'll be hidden. But feel free to ask a few more questions if you like, and in the chat or from the moderation. And thank you, Joe, so much for your time. This was a
Thank
really
you
great
for having
presentation.
me.
It was our pleasure. I'll be in touch.
Amazing. Yeah, I similar to Philip have also bought the game on a lot of different platforms because I love it that much, and I just needed to experience every new version. So I'm really excited that more people are going to play. Looks like some people have to bounce. No worries. Remember, if you have any questions, do pop them in. We still have a few minutes left here. Yeah, most of my questions were asked, but I do kind of have one that's sort of top of mind just because of work stuff I'm going through right now.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm sure you know, and your team knows that bugs can be as frustrating as they are hilarious in game development. Have there been any interesting or funny bugs that you've encountered while making the game or the new game that you'd like to share with us?
Oh my gosh. I'm sure there are. At the moment, I'm drawing a blank. I mean, the funniest ones, honestly, or the ones that make me laugh were like, um, Ben edited a script and accidentally like left a extra space or accidentally deleted a parentheses or something, and it broke the entire game. And then we would like spend like hours coming through all the wrong things trying to figure out what like we had done wrong. And then he was like, oh yeah, I just had a typo in that one script, which isn't funny to anyone else, but always made me laugh, where it's like, yeah, we're kind of always our own worst enemies. But yeah, I don't know. There's definitely some weird animation bugs we had in the game, and like character textures would get swapped around and stuff like that accidentally from like trying to dynamically load things in. Uh, but yeah, I don't know. Most of the time, I'm just paranoid about bugs, so I usually don't I don't find them funny unless they're really, really silly and ridiculous. Maybe the funniest is when Jenny would fall through the floor, and then because she has an automatic animation that plays when she's falling, where her outfit is sort of undulating in the wind, and then she would fall through, and then the entire world would fade away, and then it's just her floating in infinite space, and you could still kind of drift back and forth in space. I think I spent a lot of time when we were playtesting just whenever I would find a like hole in the wall or fall through a platform or something, and that always amused me. I'm sure somewhere there's a video of that, but yeah, bugs, fun and horrifying.
It sounds like almost like a great screensaver. I can picture Jenny just sort of
Yes, it
falling
is a really
down
good
a black screen.
screensaver, especially outside at night, because you'll see the stars are way back in the back of the environment. So then it'll just be Jenny and the stars, and they're just slowly going by as she's just falling into nothing.
That's
Yeah,
very
it's
cinematic.
very
Wow.
yeah, it's very chill. It's a good chill ambient simulator, falling simulator.
We're running low on time. Looks like by my clock, we've got maybe about 5 minutes left. I don't see any.
Yeah.
I'm just going to double check for more questions. I don't see any more. So this is, such a softball question, but I think, one that probably a lot of people do want to hear from you because you've been so successful and you're so great to talk to and you've given such incredible answers. What kind of advice would you give to students, aspiring game developers, current game developers, recent grads, if they're hoping to make a game, maybe similar to Jenny LeClue?
No, man, that is that feels like a heavy question to me. I mean, honestly, like I would say, get some professional experience while you're working on your own projects. I think to me there was a huge benefit to the business and structural aspects of working in like commercial kind of animation and design for such a long time. Even if I didn't necessarily love all the contents of it, it was like really helped get a sense of working with deadlines and under promising and over delivering and being really thinking about the kind of content you wanted to create and why you were creating and what it was for, and just working with people more experienced, whatever that field is, whether it is directly game development or not. And so, I mean, even though, obviously I love the idea of just going right out of college or high school or whatever and just making your own thing. I think do that, but I would probably try to get professional experience in whatever relative, like in the game industry or related fields of your kind of interests, because then you get that kind of work experience, which then you can bring to your own game. Like we wouldn't have been able to make Jenny LeClue at all if we were like right out of school. I mean, people are much more talented and work faster than us, but like I definitely wouldn't have had the experience to make something that ambitious, which was where it was good that it had kind of gestated over the years and then finally had a chance to like, okay, I'm kind of weird to say it, but sort of a professional at the kind of animation and creative storytelling things. And now this is a new challenge, is making a game with those tools. And that part's the kind of new challenge. But of course, I'd say, always do your own projects as well. Like, I'm not discouraging that. I'm just saying also, if you want to do it in a commercial capacity, I think it's worth getting experience with other people who are more experienced, because I've just learned so much from people way more talented and way more experienced than I. And, that gets distilled subconsciously and consciously into everything I do. So I think there's a big value in that, even though it's not very sexy to say that. It's like, get that experience while you kind of work on your own projects as well.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that as well. That's been my experience, and yeah, there's so many different professional experiences out there that have value when you eventually are making a game or pursue game development that may not even be related at all to game development, but it's helpful regardless to have. So we're coming up 2 minutes to the hour, so I think we're probably going to wind it up there, unless anyone has any last questions they want to pop in while I'm yammering on. Of course, I just wanted to thank you one more time, Joe, for your time, your incredible presentation. Thank you for Jenny LeClue. I freaking love it. Everyone here freaking loves it. And for giving away 2 copies of the game. Thank you so much for that. And where can people follow more of you, more of Ben, more of Jenny LeClue online? Where can they find you?
Yeah, like I was saying in the end of the presentation, I'm at Mografi_Joe on Twitter. Ben is Voice of Ben on Twitter. And eventually when we announce Jenny LeClue 2, that'll be on the official at Jenny LeClue Twitter account, as well as we're on Facebook and Instagram and who knows what else, because I mostly just hang out on Twitter. But yeah, you can shout out at me on the Twitters.
I love how you're talking about announcing Jenny LeClue Detective #2 while we're here talking about the second game already. Some would say it's already been announced. That sounds great. Thank you so much, Joe. I'll see you on Twitter like I always do every day. This was incredible. Thank you so much to New Media Manitoba for running this event. As John mentioned in the chat earlier, New Media Manitoba takes requests. If there's someone you'd love to see this kind of event from, please do hit up John at newmediamanitoba.com, or use the contact form on the website, or tweet at them, or just yell. They'll find out. It's a small town. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and have a great evening. Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Bye.
Evening. Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Bye.